Go.
Good afternoon, Mr. Hinton. My project is on triumph and tragedy. The triumph being the creation of insulin, the tragedy being price gouging, and of course, not being cured beforehand. So, diabetes is for phase out in Greek, and mellitus is for to push. Now, in 1886, I want to say, I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was 80 something. This German scientist found a group of cells in the pancreas that were secreting something called islin. And when he found islin, he couldn't picture it as to how it would work, except for it was on the outside of the cell membrane. Now, Frederick Banting and Charles Best decided to do some experimentation on dogs, pulling out the pancreas and deciding to pull the liquid that was secreting and to see what it was made of. Well, after a few calculations and experiments, they ended up using the pancreas from the dogs they took it out of, the secretion, or insulin, as they called it, to cure their high blood sugars. Now, after a while, they started to think, well, we can use this on humans, because at the time, humans were contracting this disease and were dying. And beforehand, it was called the pissing evil. Basically, in the 1600s in Egyptian times, they saw people who would pee frequently and want to drink frequently, and they would die up to a week or a month later. Now, you wouldn't see how that would have any correlation. But the scientists figured out that the urine was sweet because it attracted all kinds of animals and flies. And at one point they sterilized it and tasted it, and it tasted sweet. It contained a brown substance. I would assume it was similar to molasses. Now, as I was saying before, they used the dogs to cure themselves. So they thought they could do it with humans. So originally it was with bovine pancreases or pig's pancreases. And they did the same thing. And eventually they cured this 14-year-old boy named Leonard. Now, before insulin was even remotely discovered, but after 1600s, the three cures, I want to put in quotations, were the potato therapy, the oatmeal therapy, and starvation therapy, and death. So the oatmeal therapy was basically you'd eat oatmeal and water, raw oatmeal and water at the beginning to give you your carbs that you needed to survive and go the rest of the day without really eating or drinking. The starvation therapy, one account said they had to eat boiled cabbage water, which gave them 300 calories, which was enough to survive, but really not really sustainable. Now the third one, the potato therapy, I looked it over what it was that you ate a potato at least once, but the rest you wouldn't eat any carbs because that would really throw you off. And that one didn't work as well. Starvation therapy was the main practice doctors used. Now, at one point, kids were put on this starvation therapy, and it got to the point where their blood sugars, the doctors couldn't explain it, but the kids' blood sugars were still high even though they weren't eating anything. And that's because they got so hungry to the point where they would steal dog biscuits or they'd steal any scraps of food from the trash just to eat. Now, moving on. Insulin was the pave way for diabetes care. And it worked like this. Before the insulin pump, you had injections. Now, there's three major companies. There's Novolog, Humalog, and I can't remember what the third one's official name is, but it makes an insulin called Lantus. Now, before this, they would do injections, and a lot of the times they would mix up the insulins inside the injection because one was a basal rate, which basically does a whole continuous flow of insulin, which covers your blood sugars, and a food rate, which would spike immediately and bring your blood sugar down after eating. Now later you would move on into 1970 where the first insulin pump was created. It was similar to this except you had a giant site, kind of like that over there. But it would basically need to be changed every hour and the insulin was not as well tested. Now 1980s, we're getting closer to the portable device that we have now, but it's still kind of big. 1990s, it's the same thing, more computerized, more compartmentalized. You can move around. 2000s was the year that everybody had cell phones and that's what they were basing the look off of. Now, in modern times, diabetic care can consist of almost autonomous, where you don't have to do anything like you did in the old days, where you have the insulin pump, the site, and you have the CareLink, which is basically a continuous glucose monitor. Now, the sites go in the SO, and you can see it there. The other tragedy I wanted to talk about, which really doesn't have anything to do with the project per se, because it is over the 20 years, but I do want to talk about it. Since there is only three major insulin companies, they really have the monopoly or oligopoly of the insulin industry. And they can choose whatever price they want to set at. So a couple years ago, and I'm not trying to selfless promote here, But a couple of years ago, I went to a Senate hearing. And basically, I promoted my story along with these other people here about how diabetes gouging could affect my life. Because I have great insurance, it doesn't affect it now. However, when I turn 26 and I'm off my parents' insurance, this will affect me. And that's why I wanted to bring this issue up. Because insulin is still doing today what it was doing in 1921 when it was created, stopping the blood sugars from going too high, possibly eliminating the need to starve yourself. You can eat whatever you want, unless you have specific things that'll spike your blood sugars up. But really, you can eat whatever you want because of this awesome drug. Thank you for listening to my project, Mr. Hinton, and I really hope it wasn't too long, such as last time, and I hope you have a good day.